Hello, BookTube. I have a tag for you today. I was having a rotten Tuesday, I admit. Everything was going wrong. I was arguing with people without even wanting to. And my little basset hound's joints are aching because it's rainy and it's chilly and it was dark all day, no sunlight. And uh, I thought, make a video. Talk to your friends on BookTube and do a book haul, my jam, and you'll feel better. And I did. And in that book haul, I also did a nice long Grandpa Simpson style rant, and that also felt great. Oh, that gets what remains of my blood flowing. I thought, if a little is good, then a little more will be even better. I have a full night of work ahead of me. Uh, I have 7 hours of writing to do, and then 8 hours of reading. So I thought, why not a little burst before I get to all that? So in addition to a book haul, I also am going to do a tag, because tags are also my jam. I love them. I'm doing a million of them while I've been on BookTube. And this one, like the last tag I did, coincides with NaNoWriMo. This is day 15 of NaNoWriMo, the National Novel Writing Month, where we all get together to write a book, to write the skeleton and the integumentary tissue of a novel, 50,000 words. And those of you who are at day 15 and have been keeping your word count or getting close to it, swinging for the fences this whole time, congratulations to you. And it's sort of in conjunction with NaNoWriMo, and also as part of AuthorTube, the newest raucous splinter group on BookTube, I thought I would do another writing-related tag. And this one is the writing habits tag. Can't for the life of me remember where I first saw it. Certainly wasn't tagged by anyone, because I smell like stale Limburger. I guess. But it's full of questions that are low-hanging fruit for Steve rants. So I thought, well, what more do I need? So we'll go through them here. Question number 1 is typed or handwritten. And I covered this a little bit in my last tag. I wanted to hit the point again. Typed. Handwriting, or writing or typing things on a manual typewriter, is practice. It has to be, because the function of writing, the purpose of writing, is to share it. Especially fiction. Fiction is storytelling. What's storytelling without an audience? You're going to share it with friends. You're going to share it with fellow writers, a writing circle, or a group if you're lucky enough to have a good one. You're going to submit it to an editor for edits, or file it with a complacent editor for publication, one way or another. Those things are infinitely easier. In fact, they're only possible if you use some sort of electronic writing, a computer, a tablet, a phone, something like that, where the purpose is to share it. I've lost count of the number of young writers in my life who have talked a little about their writing, and then when I say, well, can I see it? They freeze up and they assume a kind of, I don't want to say a hauteur, but pride. There's definitely an element of pride, of flinty pride involved in, I don't show my writing. I don't really understand that. When I was younger and was confronted with that kind of, no, don't really do it, don't show it to anybody, I would rant against the person. Now I just smile indulgently. Back then there was no internet, and the internet is sharing. That's the whole point of it. That is its essence. So now that I have that, and now there are millions of people out there who don't do that, I don't show my writing. Now that I have access to millions of people like that, I don't so much sweat it when I get it from somebody at a party or whatever. So typing. If I'm writing in my journal, then I print. But any kind of real writing has to be typing, has to be on a computer, because you're going to share it in some way or other. You're not going to sit on it, for God's sake. We're off to a roaring start, aren't we? Question number 2, cursive or printed? I learned cursive from nuns, and it just didn't take, or if it did, it has deteriorated over the 475 years that I've been doing it. My handwriting now is virtually illegible, which is why I have trained myself, and it takes a little more training than you would think to do it at speed. I've trained myself to write, when I'm writing with a pen on paper, I write in block capital letters. So not even cursive capital letters, actual blocks. So it's 4 lines per letter. And I'm now lightning fast at doing it, but it took some training. And it's the only kind of thing I can do that I will be able to read when I'm done. So I do that. Question number 3, show us your favorite pen. These are the kinds of questions on writing tags at BookTube that are guaranteed to yank Steve's chain. If you have a favorite pen, you are doing it wrong. Because what happens if you don't have your favorite pen? What happens if it runs out of ink? What happens if it falls into a sewer grate? Then what happens? Favorite pens are talismans, and talismans are magic items, and magic items are not predictable. Magic is not predictable. So the long and the short of it is, I wouldn't write with a pen anyway, because if I wrote with a pen, it would be going on paper, and then what am I supposed to do with it? Send it by telegraph to my great aunt Lulu? I write on a computer. I don't use a pen. And B, if I did use a pen, I wouldn't use a magic pen. Question number 4. Where do you like to write? As I've mentioned a couple of times on this channel over the months that we've been on this loving adventure together, I like to write the same place I like to do everything else. Everything. And that is sitting in my bed, propped up on pillows. As God intended. When I watch videos about you young people who have a desk in your library, and you walk over to the desk and you sit down at your desk to work. No. I have about 20 pillows. I have 2 old, very loving dogs. And I have a bed. Anyway, that's where I do everything. If I could shower here, I would. Question number 5. I'll be sure to put a warning on the title of this video so that you know to avoid it. Question number 5. Who are your 5 favorite authors in terms of style? Very good question, but of course there are many styles and there are many aims to style. So I don't just have a blanket 5. It depends on what you're doing, on what kind of writing you're doing. Like, for instance, for fiction, Catherine Mansfield, Edith Wharton, Virginia Woolf. For the kind of nonfiction that I write the most, book criticism, there's the great Cyril Connolly. There's Edmund Wilson to an extent. There, I know people who like him a lot more than I do, but he's still really good. There's Gore Vidal. And in the predictable crossover, there's Virginia Woolf, who never really wrote anything without doing it better than anybody else. So that definitely applies to her book essays, which are amazing. What I wouldn't give for Norton or Penguin or Viking, somebody to do a 1,000-page book called Wolf on Books that collects the first common reader, the second common reader, and all of the great book essays that she did that are in a million different ragamuffin collections over the last century. What I wouldn't give for a nice, big, 1,000-page book, Wolf on Books, that is just most of her great book criticism. But anyway, I look to them and I love to read them. I don't know what effect they have on my style. Probably very little. It's probably people I don't like who have the most effect on my style. Question number 6. What are your 3 favorite books on writing? Well, first and foremost, there's On Writing by Stephen King. I agree with the rest of you that it stinks. It's the Bible of AuthorTube, and it stinks. So I'm just kidding. It's not Stephen King on writing. It's On Moral Fiction by John Gardner. It's An Experiment in Criticism by C.S. Lewis, a thin book called An Experiment in Criticism by C.S. Lewis, which is incredibly good. If you can find a copy. It's not just about writing, it's also about reading, but all good books on writing are really about reading. So, and it's amazing. I had a copy once years ago, a little paperback, and I almost literally, by the time I was done with it, had every line underlined. And also, not to bang on this note endlessly, but Virginia Woolf, A Room of One's Own, which is, in my opinion, the greatest essay ever written in the English language, and which is in large part about other things. It's in large part about the obstacles that even the smartest women have had to face. The institutional obstacles that Woolf saw them clearly, and even her essay, which is brutal on the subject, doesn't begin to do justice to the size and strength of those obstacles. It just kills me when I see alt-right men's right activists on BookTube, or not on BookTube, we wouldn't have them on BookTube, would we, on YouTube, making videos about how the reason that there haven't been as many great female writers in history as male writers is because women are biologically wired for less artistic aptitudes, which is exactly the sort of thing that a master race who has a slave race in thrall for 7,000 years would say. They'd say, well, then we don't really dominate them. They're built that way. They're meant to be servants. They're meant to be second-class citizens. Where have we heard that? Every single time that fascist dictatorships hold power over any group of people, that's what they say. We're not holding the power over them. It's them. I always want to say to these people, of course, the one thing you don't want to do is ever leave a comment for these people. I watch their videos because it gets my blood pumping, but I don't leave a comment. If I did, I would say the reason why we don't have any great works of literature from a woman in Europe in the 6th century is not because women in Europe in the 6th century were biologically constrained to have babies and cook cabbages. The reason we don't have that is because of even the smartest young girl in Europe in the 6th century had said to her mother or her guardian or her father, I would like to go into the library and learn how to read. She'd have been beaten senseless. As Virginia Woolf quotes, she'd have had her head mashed against a wall like a baked apple. No metaphor. She would have physically been beaten. When you look at the history of women in medieval Europe, where men's rights activists love to point for some reason, love to say, here were men inventing, the groined arch. They were inventing the pulley. They were inventing the winch. They were inventing paved roads. They were writing Beowulf. Where were women that whole time? When I see a men's right activist say that, I always want to say, well, I'll tell you where the women were in there. They were in Taliban Iraq. That's where they were. And the same thing would have happened to them if they tried to assert their intellectual independence. They'd have been beaten, burned, and killed. I don't even remember where I am right now, much less what tag I'm doing. That was an epic rant. Right. Room of One's Own. I remember that 15 minutes ago. I wanted to say, yes, it's about all that. It's about the systematic oppression of the intellectual life of women. But it's also in large part about reading and writing. And it's just an amazing meditation on both. So those three, on moral fiction and experiment and criticism and a room of one's own. And now let's move on. Question number 7. Have you ever completed NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month? And yes, I have. I've completed it 5 times, but because I'm old and don't understand technology for some reason, the first 3 don't appear on my NaNoWriMo page. My Teen Jesus epic, for instance, my King Tut with Superpowers epic, nowhere to be found. I'll work better from here on out. Question number 8. Have you ever won? Yes, I have got to 50,000 words every time I've done it, including one year. The Teen Jesus year was not easy. I hit a major roadblock, not writing related, but a major roadblock in the middle of that November, and it was faced with a question that crops up with NaNoWriMo people all the time, where I sat down and said, all right, well, can I do this or can't I? There's a good chance I can't do this, but I somehow managed to do it. Question number 9. Have you ever had anything published? I've had scattered short stories published here and there in fly-by-night, open today, shuttered tomorrow literary journals. I had one very brief thing done in The Lifted Brow, which I think is still in publication in Australia. But not in fiction, no, not really, except for that. Little squibs here and there. When it comes to nonfiction, when it comes to published book reviews, I have had book reviews published. I think, I haven't kept count, God help me, but I think probably around 2,000 or 3,000 of them. There's been an enormous amount of them. I am an undergrowth of fungus shrubbery in the literary criticism world. I'm not one of the doyens who says, well, I shall write a book review. You, my editor, will have it in 6 months, and then I will rest. I know some of those daffodils, but I'm not one of them. So there's quite a few. Question number 10. What projects are you working on now? Well, as that last answer indicated, I have deadline work all the time. I have, right, for instance, today I have a 300-page novel that I'm reviewing for Kirkus Reviews, and a gigantic, actually you can see it on the Shadow Wars, big study of the history of power exchanges and violence in the Middle East leading up to the present day that I'm reviewing for the Christian Science Monitor. So I've got those two things. But in addition to the constant carousel of deadline work, I also in November have NaNoWriMo because I am, of course, participating. And my story this year is a contemporary story. It's set in the present day with cell phones. Very strange for me. It's called Margaret and the Mystery Woman, and it's about a young man who is deeply enmeshed in the conspiracy theory world. In this book, conspiracy theories specifically revolving around a catastrophe that happens on U.S. soil. And as in the case with all such catastrophes, there's the study, there's the response, there's the study of the response. But then there's always in the background a conspiracy theory community, if you want to call it that just grows up around it and stays stronger and self-perpetuating. Every modern catastrophe in the last 50 years in American history has generated such a community, and they just keep going. It doesn't matter how unlikely they are, it doesn't matter how conclusively they're disproven, they still keep going. There are always adherents. Because it's a mind frame. It has nothing to do with the evidence. It's a mind frame. And my character, Markowitz, has that mind frame, and he's deeply involved in that world. And in the middle of all of that, by random chance, he comes across a young woman who actually likes him and wants to see if maybe he'll hang out. And it's also normal in everyone else's world, but for Markowitz, it's the weirdest thing in the world. And the book is his choice. He is eventually terrifyingly confronted with a choice. Do you cure your mind frame, or do you stay in it? You can't expect the real world, the sunlight world, the happy world, to extend its hand to save you more than this one time. So what do you do? And I'm halfway done with it. It's day 15. Let's see here. Question number 11. What is your soundtrack while writing? I don't have one. And I bet you can guess why. Because if I don't have a soundtrack while writing, then I don't need a soundtrack while writing. And if I don't need a soundtrack while writing, then it doesn't matter if something happens to my soundtrack. What if it goes wrong? What if you don't have it? What if you're out somewhere and you don't have access to your tunes? Do you write? Well, not really, no. I mean, I need my soundtrack I need my favorite pen. I need my snacks. You don't need any of those things, and you shouldn't use them, because when you use them, you develop a need for them. So I'm not being a killjoy. I'm saying not only do you not need them, but you shouldn't use them. Because if you use them, it's just human nature that you'll start to depend on them, and you shouldn't. Because then you are creating excuses not to write. And writers, that's the foremost thing they do. You don't need any help with that. Anyway, question number 12. The last one, you'll all be happy to hear. the one or two of you haven't yet unsubscribed. Do you have a writing pump-up song?